Hello everyone, welcome to EPGP Pathshala program in linguistics. Today we will discuss the module Language Isolates from the course Advanced Phonology. I am Reshma Jacob from Center of Linguistics JNU and I am speaking on behalf of Professor Shailendra Mohan. In this module we'll try to get familiar with the concept of language isolates, and we'll also look at some examples to understand the concept better. A language isolate refers to a natural language which has no relatives. That is, there is no demonstrable genealogical or genetic relationship with any other language. So, if you're familiar with the concept of language typology or language family, you must know what we mean by genetic relationship with another language. So when we categorize a particular language as an isolate, we mean that it is a language which has not been descended from any other language, or it does not share a common ancestor with any other language. Precisely, language isolates can be regarded as a language family with only one member. We're aware of a few language isolates from South Asia. They are Nihali, which is also pronounced as Nahali, and Burushaski, Kusunda, and Vedda. Nihali is spoken in central India. Burushaski, which is another language isolate, is spoken in Baltistan, Pakistan, and in the Kashmir Valley of India. Kusunda language is spoken in Nepal, and Vedda speakers are from Sri Lanka. When we speak of language family, we know language family refers to a set of languages for which there is sufficient demonstrable evidence to show that they descend from a single ancestor language and they're related genetically. So languages in a particular language family will be genetically related to one another, and they are descendants of a particular language. Thus, Indian languages belong to various language families such as Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Tibeto-Burman, and Austroasiatic. Languages like Hindi, Bangla, Bhojpuri, etc. belong to the Indo-Aryan language family, and languages such as Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, etc. belong to the Dravidian language family. So each of these languages in a language family is said to be genetically related to one another. On the contrary, language isolates, as we mentioned earlier, are a language family with only one member. The language isolate may have had relatives in the past, or language isolates might have once been a member of a particular language family whose other relatives may have disappeared before they could come to be known. Now, an important thing is that we should not confuse language isolates with unclassified languages. An unclassified language is a language in which there is not enough demonstrable and sufficient data to claim whether the language has genetic relationship with other language. Whereas language isolate is a language for which there is sufficient and demonstrable data to be compared meaningfully with other languages, and the correspondence of data do not reveal linguistic kinship or relationship with any other languages. So the difference is unclassified languages have insufficient data to claim that it is related to another language. But in the case of language isolate, there is enough data to compare and correspond, but no linguistic relationship is found. So there are a total of 129 language isolates around the world, and there are 350 independent language families. Language isolates make up to 37% of all language families, which is over 1/3 of world's linguistic diversity. If you may please look into the data that is given in your text, we can see that there are 10 language isolates in Africa and 55 language isolates in South America, 20 language isolates in North America, and 9 language isolates in Asia. This list may go on. As linguists, we know that sign language indeed is a language, and it's not just a random set of gestures or symbols. So, as we were talking about language isolates, it is important to mention sign language as well. In fact, sign language is considered as true language isolates. A number of sign languages emerged independently without any ancestral language. For example, in Tanzania, there are 7 schools for deaf students which have its own sign language. So each there are 7 sign language schools, and each of these school have a different variety of sign language or its own sign language, and each of this has no connection to any other sign language. Sign languages can also develop on its own outside the school in communities with high incidences of deafness. So these sign languages are presumed to be isolates or small local families because these deaf communities consist of people who do not have sign language speaking parents and have shown characteristics of sign language itself, and they have not borrowed their sign language from other deaf communities. So they are not in any way related to another sign language. Now the question is, why is the study of language isolates important? An in-depth study of language isolates can provide us valuable information for improving the general classification of languages spoken in the world. Moreover, it can enrich our understanding of migration and dispersal of language communities and also their specific typological characteristics. Now, another question that arises is such a study is it important, or should such a study be a priority? Yes, it has to be, because most of the language isolates are endangered languages and they have to be described and documented. Language isolates can even provide insights in understanding the human past and can provide adequate representation of linguistic diversity in sampling the typological traits. We can use a variety of methods to advance our knowledge about language isolates, some of which are internal reconstruction, comparative reconstruction, study of loanwords, philological investigation of names, and areal linguistic traits. We'll now briefly discuss each of these methods. Internal reconstruction is one of the most used tools to investigate the history of isolates. It is a method of recovering information about past forms of a language from the characteristics of the language at a later date. For example, in Standard Basque, the word wine has 2 variant forms. The form ardo is used in isolation and ardan is used in compounds. Internal reconstruction based on these would suggest something like ardano, or at least a word in which the sound n is present as a past form. And this is confirmed in the reconstruction by the comparative method of Adano based on comparison of the variants in Basque. So internal reconstruction postulates a change of the sound n, the sound n deletion, or the loss of intervocalic n. This is confirmed by comparative evidence in the dialects of Basque. Comparative reconstruction can also be very useful in investigating the language isolates. The comparative method can be applied to regional dialects of a language isolate by performing a feature by feature comparison of 2 or more regional dialects of a particular language isolate. Another way to study the history of isolates is by looking into the loanwords. So now the semantic content of loanwords can reveal the influence in the areas of laws, administration, agriculture, religion, and other aspects of a language isolate. For example, more than 300 ancient loanwords from Latin into Basque reveals that Roman influence on Basque in various domains of laws, administration, etc. The next method is the philological investigation of names, and philological investigation of name include looking for older citations, place names, deity names, personal names, etc., which can reveal the older attestations of a language isolate. Another source of information about the history of isolates is area linguistics. A linguistic area or a sprachband is a geographical region in which languages of area share structural traits due to language contact and not through inheritance. So, in a linguistic area, languages may share features, and this is not necessarily because of inheritance but because of language contact. It is important to note that linguistic traits are shared due to borrowing or diffusion. Such a study reveals historical contacts and explains certain changes in languages involved and the changes in isolates. The next method is Water and Sahen. It is the German for words and things. So Water und Sahen is a philological movement of the early 20th century based largely in Germany and Austria. Its proponents believe that the etymology of a word should be studied in close association with the study of the artifacts and cultural concept with those which those words denote. Precisely, Water und Sahen strategies also provide information on the history of language isolates. These are strategies for detecting past language and cultural relations. So you study a word, and the study of this word will also reveal the cultural denotations. Okay, you'll also understand a bit about the culture by looking into the word. So, one of these strategies involve analyzability of words. By this we mean analyzing the morphological complexity of words. Words that can be analyzed into transparent parts or analyzed into multiple morphemes are believed to be more recent than words which have no internal analysis. For example, the Basque word garagado, meaning beer, um, the Basque word garagado, meaning beer, is analyzed morphologically as garagar, which means barley, and garagar plus ado together gives garagado, and ado means wine. So, however, ardo, which is wine, has no such morphological analysis. It cannot be broken or it cannot be divided into another set. Therefore, it is inferred that the word for wine is probably older in Basque than the word for beer. Another Water und Sohen strategy involves the analyzability of toponyms. It is also inferred that place names that can be analyzed into component parts probably is a recent occurrence than those which have no such internal analysis. A third Water und Sohen strategy involves words which bear non-predictive or irregular morphemes. The non-predictive morphemes are assumed to be older than words which is composed of only predictive morphemes. So analyzability of toponyms say that place names can be analyzed into component parts, probably is a recent occurrence than those which have no such internal analysis. And the third strategy involves words which bear non-predictive morpheme, and the non-predictive morphemes are assumed to be older than the words which is composed of only predictive morphemes. So far we discussed some ways to obtain information about the history of language isolates. Hence, it is understood that just because language isolates have no known relatives, it's not like we cannot know anything about their history. We can use any or all of these methods which we just discussed to understand and investigate language isolates. Let's now look at some language isolates in South Asia. As we already mentioned, Nihali is a language isolate that's spoken in central India. Nihal people are settled in Jammu, Sonbali, Kordev, and Chalthana, and Nimkheda villages. People refer to them as Nihal and their language as Nihali. But the native speakers identify themselves as Kalto and their speech as Kalto Mandi. Nihali is the only language isolate spoken in central India. It is perhaps the only remnant of an ancient pre-Munda, pre-Dravidian, pre-Indo-Aryan language family with no living relatives. The first person to draw attention about the fact that Nihali language is a language isolate was R. Shafir in 1941, and he concluded that the language had an origin quite separate from Munda or Dravidian, and also drew attention to certain correspondence of vocabulary items with Himalayan languages. The first detailed monograph on Nihali or Nahali language was written by F.B.J. Kuiper in 1962. On the basis of 505 etima, Kuiper found a stratum shared by Nahali with neighboring Kuruk, and this includes loanwords from Indo-Aryan which entered Nahali via Kuruk. He also found a Munda stratum without parallels in Kuruk. He also found 4 Dravidian strata. Around 12 to 15 etima that have clear parallels in Tibeto-Burmese Himalayan languages were also found. And around 123 examples of isolates that cannot be etymologized at that moment was also found. According to Kuiper, Dravidian and Kuruk loans in the languages are the most recent borrowings. About 1/4 of the Nihali vocabulary has no correspondence to any other languages in India. So none of the existing studies till date have provided conclusive evidence for a genetic relationship between Nihali and other existing languages. We'll now move on to Burushaski, which is yet another language isolate. Burushaski is sometimes referred to as the South Asian Basque. It is an unclassified language unrelated to any non-language family. It is spoken in Pakistan and in India. Burushaski is mainly spoken in Hunza, Nagar and Yazin in Pakistan, and also in parts of Kashmir Valley in India. There are around 100,000 people who speak Burushaski. And Burushaski is spoken in a region which is home to speakers of several language families. So they have Indo-Iranian on the south, north and west, Tibeto-Burman on the east, and Atlaik, which slightly further to the north. The Indo-Iranian neighbors of Burushaski further fall into two subgroups or subfamilies, which is Iranian and Indo-Aryan. Some of the unique features of Burushaski includes one, a presence of a very rich inventory of retroflex consonants and uvular stop and fricative consonants. Another feature is that it has a huge number of different plural marking suffixes, and it is as many as 60 or more than that. Also, Burushaski has a very rich agreement system. Agreement features for ergatives as well as absolutive arguments simultaneously expressed on the verb when both are present in a sentence. Now, another feature is that distinction into inherently possessed as opposed to non-inherently possessed noun, such as body parts and kinship terms, is observed in this language isolate. Moreover, a fourfold classification of nouns, that is plus human versus minus human, and among humans you have male and female, and among non-humans you have plus concrete and minus concrete. So these are differently expressed in nouns and verbs for agreement patterns. Also, there is a unique way of signifying kinship terms which is very different from the neighboring languages and cultures. Now, another language isolate which we'll discuss today is Kusunda. Kusunda is a language isolate spoken in Nepal, and Kusundas are also called Banarajas, kings of forest, because they used to live in forest. This language is critically endangered with just two speakers, and as of 2013, and these two speakers speak two different varieties of the language, two different dialects of the language. Kusunda appears to have external relationship with a number of indigenous peoples' languages spoken across the world, from Alaska of North America to South and Central Africa, Europe, and Asia. An in-depth study on Kusunda language could be a reliable tool for understanding the prehistory of early inhabitation of South Asia. Let's now list out some of the general characteristics of Kusunda. Phonologically, Kusunda possesses sounds that do not exist in other languages of the region, namely uvular and pharyngalized consonants. Conversely, there are sounds found throughout the region like retroflex consonants which do not occur in Kusunda. Furthermore, the point of articulation in Kusunda is more or less immaterial. It is the active articulator that counts as contrastive. Another characteristic feature of this language is that it is a grammatically complex language. And one of the important features is being pronominalization. There is a prominence of nasal sound in Kusunda language, and syntax in Kusunda follows a basic SVAOV constituent order with alternative orders used to mark specialized pragmatic notions. And this feature is common in the linguistic area. Subject NPs are often deleted in running discourse. In terms of grammatical case marking, Kusunda follows a nominative accusative case marking alignment. Verbs in Kusunda divide broadly into class 1 and class 2. In class 1 verbs, person agreement is marked by prefixes and number by suffixes. In class 1 verbs, person agreement is marked by prefixes and number agreement is marked by suffixes. Whereas in class 2 verb, both person agreement and number is marked by suffixes. So class 1 verbs are old with a lot of irregularity in the paradigms and an abundance of suppletive forms. The majority of verbs belong to class 2. Such verbs can be thought of as a non-inflicting, that is, all inflections fall on an auxiliary based on the verb to make, to do, etc. The basic TAM system, the basic tense aspect mode system in Kusunda makes a binary distinction between realis and irrealis. Class 2 verbs have also developed a past tense distinction, a distinction that is generally missing from class 1 verbs. So, what we found common in Nihali, Kusunda, and Burushaski is that all these languages have different unique features which makes them stand alone from other neighboring languages, and hence we call them language isolates. So there are 129 language isolates spoken in the world, and there is nothing unusual about these languages. Language isolates constitutes 1/3 of language families spoken in the world. They're not very different from other languages, but what we need to understand is that they may have had been a member of a family which was gradually lost. All these languages can further diversify into a number of other related languages. I hope this video was helpful in understanding more about language isolates and other concepts related to language isolates. Thank you.